Hello class, we're gonna factor trinomials when the little coefficient, so when a is not 1 or when a is greater than 1. So the little coefficient is 1. And there are several methods. The methods that we're gonna review today is the box. So I'm gonna first give you the overview of how to work with the box, and then we're gonna follow the steps. So on the first example, you have 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. So the first thing that you're going to do, you're going to fill out you're going to first draw your box, divide it into 4 parts, and you're going to fill them out. So the first term, the 2x squared, goes on the first box, and make sure you leave some space over here, some space below. And then you go to the last term, the negative 4, it goes in the last box. Then to fill out the other 2 boxes, we're going to have to go back and use the table, the one that we have been using so far. So let's change colors over here so we don't confuse. So if we're going to use the same method so far, we're going to have to identify our A, the B, and the C. So your A is 2, your B is negative 7, and your C is negative 4. And again, for the table, let's do it right here. I'm trying to figure out my space. So we're going to multiply the first times the last, or in other words, multiply A times C. And that's going to be negative 8. So over here, negative 8, and over here, negative 7. So your B. So remember, your AC goes in this side, and your B goes on this side. So we're going to be looking for 2 numbers that when you multiply them gives you negative 8, and when you add them gives you negative 7. So to get negative 8, for example, it can be 2 times 4, and one of them has to be negative, so let's make it 2. And negative 2 times 4, that's negative 8. And negative 2 plus 4 is positive 2. So this will not work. So we have to look for another combination. Another combination that works is 8 times 1. And we just make sure that we make one of them negative. I'm going to make that negative, the 8 negatives. So negative 8 times 1, that's negative 8. And let's add them up to see if it works. Negative 8 plus 1, that is negative 7. So yep, this combination is the one that works. Now that we have the combination that it works, don't go and put it into a parenthesis, because we cannot do that because over here the A is not 1. So we cannot put in a parenthesis yet. We have to first, we're going to use this combination and fill out the other 2 boxes. So the negative 8 is going to go here and the 1 here. It doesn't matter if you want to put the 1 over here or the 8 here, it doesn't matter the order. Just make sure that you put an X next to those 2. Okay, now that we have all the box filled, let's find out, we're going to find all the factors of each little square. So we have to find the prime factors. So for example, for 2, well, it's just 2. And then you have x squared, so x times x. And then over here, it's negative 8x. And whenever you have a negative, make sure you put a negative 1. And then the prime factors of 8 are 2 times 2 times 2. So remember, we're doing the prime factorization. So we're going to try to make them as simplified. And now don't forget your x. And over here is just 1x, so I'm just going to put the x here. And negative 4, so we start with the negative 1. And then prime factorization is 2 times 2. Okay? Once we're done with the prime factorization on each square, we have to start factoring out. So the way that we're going to do this, we're going to do it by rows. So this is a 1 row, the first row. Here you have your second row. And once we're done with those 2 rows, we're going to do the columns. So let's get started. And it's going to be very similar to what we have been doing so far. To factor out the rows, we have to look to what do we have in common. So for example, over here, we have in common the 2 and we have in common the x. We don't have anything else in common. So that we have in common, we're going to take it out, factor it out, and we're going to put it over here. Okay, so we just finished factoring the first row. Now let's factor the second row. What numbers do you have in common? And this is a little bit tricky because there's no numbers here that are in common, because this one only has an x and this one has no x's. But remember that you can always do times 1, anything, doesn't matter what, because it's not going to change your result. Like 5 times 1, 6 times 1 is always that same number, so it doesn't matter. So whenever you have no numbers that you have in common, basically it means you need to take out a 1. So this one. So now that we have this, so let's highlight the ones that we just took out. Now it's the time to factor out the columns. So what do we have in common now? We have a common in x. And notice that also, besides being in common, those are your leftovers. So those x's are the leftovers that you have in common. Take them out. Over here, what are the leftovers that you have in common? The -1, the 2, and the 2. So we're going to have to multiply all those ones. So -1, 2, and 2. So let's multiply the -1 times 2, -2 times 2, -4. So basically, we're going to take out that -4. Make sure that you multiply these numbers. So -1 times 2 times 2 is -4. And basically, we right now have the factors. So we're going to have to write now as a parentheses. And there you go. There's your answer. So there's a lot of information to take in. And remember, we have to practice a lot. So let's try to do this with the steps. Let me just check one thing. Oh yeah, I want to make sure that it was recording. Okay, so now for the steps, let's take it a little bit slower. Okay, so the first thing is, well, draw your box. And if you notice, in this case, we have -6x squared plus 22x minus 12. Make sure that you always remember, on the other method, whenever you have a negative in front of the x squared, we have to take it out. We're going to have to do the same thing over here. The x squared is negative, so we don't want that. We have to take out that negative. So we're going to do the same thing we have been doing. This is -1 times 6. This is -1 times -22. And this is -1 times 12. So we're going to take out the negative ones. So take out the negative ones. And this, we're going to rewrite it as -1 times 6x squared minus 22x plus 12. 12, not 2. And I'm going to move down my box so I have a little more space. Uh-oh, not that. Uh-oh. Making a mess here. There we go. So we just need a little bit more space. That's why I move it down. So there we go. The first step is to draw the box. And just make sure that your x squared is positive, which is now. And this is nothing new. We already saw that. The next step will be to fill out the first square with ax. And what is your ax? Right here, 6x squared. So the first square, which is right this one, we're going to fill it out with ax, which is 6x squared. So let's write it here, 6x squared. The next step will be to fill out the last square with c. So the last square is this one right here. And just to make sure, this was ax, and this one is c. Ax squared. Hello. And here is c. the next step will be to make the table to find the right combination. So I'm gonna erase those arrows so I have more space, because unfortunately I don't have enough space. And probably I'm gonna need to move this table to the other side. Okay, so let's make the table over here in the blue part. And remember, here it goes AC. So we have to multiply 6 times 12. There we go. The first times the last, so 6 times 12. And we know that's 72. And then on this side goes B, so negative 22. So what two numbers do you multiply to get 72? Then when you add them, you get negative 22. So on this case, well, we can start with the obvious ones, like 6 times 12. Well, actually negative 6 times negative 12. But when you add those two numbers, well, negative 6 minus 12, that is negative 18. So this is not the combination that we're looking for. So what other two numbers you multiply to get 72? Well, another obvious one is negative 9 times negative 8. But when we add them, negative 9 minus 8, that is negative 17. And that is not the combination that we're looking either. So another combination that might work is, let's see. What about if we try, remember that whenever you cannot find a combination that works, you can always divide. So 72 divided by 2, that is actually 36. So negative 2 times negative 36, well, that's a really big number. And it's going to give us negative 38. So no, not that one. Oops, let it go. We can also try dividing by 3. And we're going to get 24. So that seems really near 22. So negative 3 times negative 24. When you add them, it gives you negative 27. So no, not that one. So let's try dividing by 4. 72, hello. Divided by 4, it gives you 18. So negative 4 times negative 18, that is negative 22. So yep, it works. So here is the right combination that we want. Negative 4 and negative 18. So yes, let's remind the steps. Make the table to find the right combination. Yep, we did. The right combination is negative 4 and negative 18. So, spelling mistake. Let's correct it really quick. There we go. Use the combination to fill the other two boxes. Which other two boxes? Well, the empty ones. So the combination was negative 4 and negative 18. And don't forget to put an X next to each number. That's right. So let's put the X over here. There we go. Next step will be find all the prime factors in each square. So we need to make sure that we're finding the simplified ones, let's say, the prime ones. So for example, for 6, we know 6, well, we have 2 times 3. And then we have 2 x's. And then negative 4x, remember you have to put a negative 1. I think I have this over here. Let's double check. When there's a negative, write the negative 1 as a factor. So let's make sure we do that. Negative 1 times, well, 4 is 2 times 2, and then times x. Negative 18, again a negative 1. And then 18 is actually 9 times 2. And 9 is 3 times 3. So the prime factorization will be 3 times 3 times 2nx. Okay, so let's do it again. 18, it's actually 9 times 2. And 9 is 3 times 3. So the prime factorization will be the last numbers. I have to hurry up. Will be the last numbers over here. And we need to do number 12. So 12 is actually 4 times 3, and 4 is 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 times 3. Next step is factor the rows. And when there's a -1 in front, take it out. Okay, so let's see what do we have in common in this row. We have in common a 2, and we have in common an x. Nothing else? I don't think so. So that's what's going to go outside. And then the second row, we have in common a 2, and that's it. But when there's a -1 in the front, take it out. Here's a -1 that we have to take it out. So that will be -1 times 2, that's -2. Okay, so we're done with the rows. Now factor the columns. So again, when there's a -1 in the front, take it out. And don't forget that these ones, let's see. Let's go back a little bit. We got something else in common. Mistake, hello. We got in common the 2, but also a 3 over here. So it's 2 times 3 actually. Let's erase it. It's not gonna be 2. Because your common factor is -1 times 2 times 3, right? Because those are the ones that we have in common. And 2 times 3 is 6, times the -1, -6. Now, what are your leftovers? So, though that is when we factor the columns. So the leftovers are 3x. And the leftover over here, it's a 2. But you also have a -1 in the front, so we have to take it out. And the last step will be to write the factors in parentheses. So the factors in parentheses, 2x minus 6 and 3x minus 2. And there we go. So let's stop this thing because we're running out of we have 10 minutes, so let's stop this thing.